Thanks for staying with us. Join us on the show is an agric expert, African farmer Mogaji. We'll be discussing basically how Nigeria can feed herself. You've had issues, especially recently. Thank you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Good to have you. You've had issues recently because of the transition of the previous government up until now, and people are really worried about the fact that subsidy removal has caused everything to go up. I mean, now that we have a floating naira, it's up and down, resources, raw materials. Farmers are scared, because it's almost as if we're seeing the true value or the true pricing for many of these materials. How do you think it's going to affect the agricultural market in these recent times?
First and foremost, the subsidy removal has not affected prices yet.
Okay.
Yeah. By end of this month, you'll begin to feel it, but in August, you'll feel the full effect.
Yeah, so the one we're feeling now.
So what affected
because
these
they just,
prices?
they've May 29, they just planted. It has not had that true reflection.
Wow.
So by end of this month, stroke mid next month, that's when the effect will come up. Yeah, it's going to affect a lot of the rural people.
Okay.
More than the urban. Yes, a lot, because the standard of living in the rural communities is already challenged. They have to stop one child from going to school, for the other. Most times, they don't eat the good farm produce.
Yeah.
They sell the good and eat the low quality. So it's going to affect them more. But beyond that, across board, I personally think that, there will be increased taxes and co. So people who pay taxes, should be taken care of. And what do I mean by that? We need to have, like the river basins, it belongs to the federal government. The equipment belongs to federal government. The land belongs to the federal government. So they need to come up with like a scheme where they produce the food and it goes to parastatals and companies who pay taxes so they can have reduced prices. So it's profitable for the farmers operating on the river basin and people who they deduct their taxes, from source can also get to buy food cheaper. That way everybody will feel the effect. Okay, I'm paying higher taxes, things are going up, and that is done. But don't forget, from Bureau of Statistics also, over 56% of everybody's salaries go to buying of food purchases. So any effect that helps to reduce the price of food helps everybody.
Okay. So are you saying now that this administration has a plan to help cushion the effects by somewhat subsidizing the food produce so that taxpayers can at least buy it cheaper? And
that is an idea I put on the table.
Giving.
Yes, but what I also know from the president's speech, and I say this is the first speech since 1999 that talks about the value chain of agric. Our previous administrations have only picked, like, we want to make food available, they focus on crops. You plant corn, tomatoes, and co with fertilizer. But this is the first time we are hearing from a president in a speech talk about storage, talk about livestock. Livestock really doesn't even show up. We talk about crops, we don't talk about livestock. So for the first time, talking about the hubs, talking about rural economic development, so this is the first time we are having a robust speech talking about the value chain. And one of the reasons why we've not been able to feed ourselves is because there's not been an approach that attacks the value chain. So we are picking crops.
Yeah.
And so when we pick crops and we don't plant for livestock, then what that does is that we grow the crops, but when the livestock consume the crops, we don't have it sufficient. So from that, we know that he has consulted with some crucial stakeholders, consultants, and developmental partners for that speech to happen that way. Okay. We're only hoping for good implementation.
Right.
Governor Zulum of Borno State recently released 80 vehicles to help transport farmers from their homes to the farm and back, and as sort of a palliative. How do you think this will affect prices of produce coming from that state? Would it really do much with the prices?
You know, in Nigeria, it's very interesting that most times we don't ask the farmers what they want.
Yes, so what they
What they need.
We think from there's what we call lab to field. So we sit in the laboratories and the offices and think, let's give them vehicles. These people need good seeds. These people need, those buses are meant to move their farm products to urban centers, not to move the farmers. The farmers will want to move themselves to the farm, but they want to be sure that when we produce, everybody produces at the same time because they have produced with rain. So they want to be sure that Lagos is in need of this, Abuja is in need of this, Port Harcourt is in need of this. They would have preferred those vehicles to move those things to where they can get premium prices as against moving them. It's a good initiative, but that is not what
They need.
they need. That is not what will keep them sustainable.
Okay.
So, we've spoken about some of the problems that we are anticipating. Your first sentence was shocking in that you're alluding to the fact that we haven't really felt the impact of the change, you know, the economic changes. I sort of beg to differ because we've seen substantial hike in prices, and it was linked to the cost of fuel being taken out and the fact that the transport cost from moving things from the farm gate to the cities had gone up. But my question would be, what would you advise is the best approach from the government to reduce the cost of food? I know the US does a buy. They buy and store and release to the market. They created a vehicle for that. Do you believe that approach would work here and it won't get corrupted in our usual style? How do you think within our local way we can bridge that gap to ensure farmers get good value and we that were consuming are not paying excessively for what is being produced?
Well, first thing, for us to be able to achieve that, we need to focus on the industries. Why should we focus on the industries? The mistakes previous administrations have been making is they focus on the people, not the industry. Ideally, it's good.
Yeah.
But when you focus on the people and you don't pay attention to what the industries will require, then the industries have more money, like corn now. They would buy the corn at whatever price, and so the people will eventually starve. But when you focus on the industries, you are able to produce for the industries, maintain the system, ensure that there's sustainability, then the people, you will produce excess for the people. But when you focus on the people, you leave the industries. And even beyond the industries, West Africa will also come to buy. So when we focus on industries, we're able to export and we're able to produce more than enough. So it's crucial we do that. But ultimately is we need to eat local. Until we begin to eat local,
Singaporean rice.
then that way we will not be able to sustain it. So when I mean eat local is eat dundu, you know, offer akara and ogi to foreigners that come to meet the president and the governor. So until we begin, give them our corn. You know, give them, you know, when you hear dundu and you hear yamavita, or what's that? Yamarita. Yamarita is dundu, just put in flour and egg. You know, so we need to begin to do this. The more we do this internally, the more these things grow. Until we begin to grow it, that demand will not be there. But government cannot do a lot now because the government is in debt.
Yes.
The government is in debt. Government just needs to put together programs, seminars, trainings. The parastatals need to let people know what is available where and how to take advantage of it. See, Nigeria is not food secure, not because of what we don't have, but what we are not doing with what we have. We have dams, we have lands, we have everything required, but we focus on the money we don't have, forgetting that there are many people who have the resources locally who can get involved. The government is just supposed to create platforms. That is what is missing. then the government also does not work together. Now, I boldly will say this, and I start to be corrected. The Ministry of Agriculture can never feed Nigeria. And I'm saying can never feed Nigeria.
Let me pause you for that second, because I would like you to respond. Let me take this call. Good morning. Thanks for calling. I'll come back to that. Oladele, thanks for calling. You're live. Hello, Oladele, you're live. Thanks for calling.
Hello, Auntie Mariah, good morning.
Morning.
This is Oladipo.
Oladipo, go ahead, please.
Yes, please, I want to go back to this Muslim issue.
Yes, it's your view. Let it count.
It's a pity it has happened. Yes, I'm talking. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me?
Very clearly.
Oladipo. Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Now, go back to the Muslim issue. Unfortunately, the incident has happened. He did it. But she was able to penetrate jam, get whatever she did. Therefore, I think jam by now is tighten up their security better. They are trying, but I think it is time. It is time.
Oladipo, your phone line is not going through. I do apologize. A bit muffled. Yes, ma'am.
So, let me...
No, he was saying something.
Yeah.
Was saying the fact that Ministry of Agriculture
Yes.
cannot feed
So I
Nigeria.
cannot feed Nigeria.
Yes, tell us why.
The way it works is we focus on Ministry of Agriculture. They are in charge of policy administration. The ones that own the lands and the dams they are the Ministry for Water Resources. So it's a marriage. So every time we focus on the Ministry of Agriculture, they leave the Ministry for Water Resources out. All the tomatoes we eat in the dry season, the rice we eat in Nigeria, is produced by the Ministry for Water Resources under the river basin. How do I know? I've been a river basin farmer for over 18 years across the country. So when you are always hyping the Ministry of Agriculture and you leave the Ministry for Water Resources, they sit down and wait. Because you don't bring them on the table. So you can give them the seeds, give them the fertilizers, the farmers will plant, but the ministry knows that this is the wrong timing to give them, but you've not involved them, so they keep quiet.
So should they?
Why are they?
Yes, they should.
Quiet. Shouldn't they involve themselves?
Exactly. Is it not?
You see, it comes from presidency to say this is a joint task force. Everything we do, we are doing it together.
They have to be told that.
Exactly.
They have to,
Yeah.
because there's different policies, different restrictions. So you say handle water. So they say, okay, we'll give you water. But they should be part of the planning. They should be part of the decisions.
Should they just be merged with agriculture?
No.
Or should
They
we
should
take
not.
a department in agriculture that works with water resources?
Some time ago, they merged them together, but they are doing two different things.
Okay.
But we need to understand that, you cannot, amplify husband and leave the wife. Ministry for Water Resources and Ministry of Agriculture
Husband
is husband and wife.
Okay.
So-
Let me take this call from Yakub. Good morning, Yakub. Thanks for calling.
Good morning, Mariah.
You're live.
Good morning to everyone. Mariah, I think at this option, you need to give kudos to Professor Oluyede. I'm talking about most of my issues here. But and then I don't have, I'm not surprised, actually, because Professor Oluyede is an alumni of Markaz Arabi, Alim Arabi here in Agege. He's a student of Sheikh Adam. So, because Professor Oluyede, he has a watertight evidence against that little girl. And then I give him kudos for that. That tells you that we still have a lot of leaders in this country that are upright. And then one of them is Professor Oluyede, and then you should keep it on, because I'm waiting for him to even become a minister of education in this country so that he can be able to set us right. And then come to the studio there. Your guest is scaring us. Telling us that in the months coming, we are still going to face it more than now, what we are facing already. Is it what he's telling us? I don't get it. For what we are
Thank you,
facing
Yakub.
right now, that's still telling us this. Yes.
Thank you, Yakub. So everything you said, Nigerians are hearing you, but what they are hearing really is the part that you're saying food prices will go up. And the reason
Yes.
is because, let Nigerians understand it. Why? are food
It
prices-
will go up because prices just increased. If you plant tomatoes, it takes 60 to 90 days. You plant corn, is 90 days. Anything you plant, the earliest okra is 45 days. So if they announced June 29 and price increased, everything they planted in June 29th with May 29th will just be coming out 45 days, 60 days, and 90 days. So all the costs that has increased has not affected the crops that will be coming out.
Right.
The poultry that will be reared, 60 days poultry. You know, so every of these costs is just going in from May 29. So the actual cost will be coming out. So it's inevitable that what we're seeing now will be different from the things that were started May 29.
Sir, is it possible?
Before you ask your question, let me take this call. Come to you. Thanks for calling. Hello.
Hello, Madam Mara, good morning.
You're live. Go ahead, please, sir.
Yeah, I am interested about what you are just saying about husbandry. You know, in every part of Nigeria, husbandry can be segmented in their own peculiar area.
Yeah.
Like in Adaba, we don't have migrant husbandry people or pastoralists. No. There are certain people with their animals. What they need is capacity building, dam, water, and capacity to build their own pasture. They have their own land. We need good policies. It's not about government. The gazetted grazing areas can be handed over to private developers. Pack the husbandry people and their animals, not the families. The families should settle around villages, but animals should be settled in grazing areas. So there are certain way of doing things. There is no government that will drive any good policy about agriculture, whether it is crop, whether it is animal, whatever. We need private sector participation. We need to develop a template of private sector developing the grazing areas, whether it is in Benue, whether it's in Adaba, whether it's in Kwara, whether it's in Kano.
Right.
So these are private sectors. These are business.
Thank you very much, Aminu. I think you...
You know, I did mention earlier that government just needs to let the private sector understand what is available and how it can be accessed. In fact, if you go to FIRO, I bought a big manual there about 12 years ago. FIRO has chronicled everything in every local government. Smedan also did that a few years back. All these things exist.
Wow.
We don't need anything new. We just need to implement these things. Government just needs to really come out leveraging media now to say, this is available, underutilized. A lot of the river basin projects in Southwest is underutilized. The man that just called, I did some projects in Gaya, in Adama a few years back. What he said is right. Everybody has something different in each local government. We cannot afford again to say that, oh, we will only pick tomato, corn, cassava, beans, and co. No, there are parastatals of government that have that mandate. We only need an administrator at Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry for Water Resources, who will place a demand on these research institutes and parastatals to deliver the mandate they have. They are earning salaries, they have budgets. Now, so we can't say pineapple is wasting in Edo, plantain is wasting in Edo. Now, can we process those plantains and pineapples wasting in Edo? It's not government that will do it, but government can package to say, this is available here. We can work with our parastatals to make sure this is sustainable for you. You know, Ekiti has plantain, Oshun has quite a lot. So
what role do you think private sector plays in all of this? Because sometimes people just say that government's job is not a... that was your question.
No.
BC was
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, I do apologize. So, I mean, because sometimes people say government has no business in actually doing business. You know, that the value chain must be given to private sector to come in.
Yes.
What do you say to that?
Yeah, so government has no business doing business, but government's main goal is facilitating business.
Yeah.
I can tell you this, even when government says come, many people don't take advantage. Now, the voice is not loud enough, but guess what? Because it takes some time, agriculture takes some time. And there are many vagaries. And in the last 3 years, there's been huge challenges, mostly policy issues. Mostly policy issues. A state will come up with this policy, federal will come up with this policy, and it ruins you. Take, for instance, 2009, I lost 17 million. That was when there was Xenon in Nigeria. Suddenly, you know, they only gave Xenon the opportunity to bring in diesel. Now, so there was no diesel for 3 weeks. And in that 3 weeks, we had crops on a government facility in Iseyin. And so the corn, 250 acres, dried up. Fortunately, it can be verified, you know, dried up. So after that, we muscled again, raised funding, started again. And Oyo State then now came up with another policy that if you want to buy more than 100 bags of fertilizer, they need to come and inspect your farm. When they inspect your farm, they'll write reports. Based on the report, they now give you approval. The corn was almost matured as at that time, after the 17 million. And check policy somersaults since 2020 till date. So we can't be food secure if we're not speaking the same language.
Right.
So that affects people.
I'll come to you, BC, but let me take this call. Good morning. I think Etu. Thanks for calling.
Good morning. Good morning.
You're live. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Morayo. I want to appreciate your program.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Morayo. Well, I also appreciate the gentleman that is talking, but I want to disagree with some of the things that is actually going on in this country. I'm calling you from Niger State. If you remember what happened in Buhari administration, I think Buhari government spent more than $1 trillion in agriculture. But some of this money going to private pockets, Morayo. When you talk about the refund, come to Niger State, we don't see anything that refund and other agricultural sector contribute to this country. And the Buhari administration did very well, but they spent more than $2 trillion subsidizing agriculture and even the water ministry that is talking about. So the policy again, when you come down to state government, people in Niger State, so many things we have learned that we should produce. In fact, we should feed this country. So when my guest is saying that government has no business to do business, government have business to do business. Because, yes, just as what you said, that, some of these are farmers, they should be asking what do they want. But government always gives them a lot of money, and some of this money, Morayo, go into private pocket. I really appreciate your program, Morayo.
Thank you, sir.
Can I
Go
say
ahead.
something? Okay. Now, until we face the reality, we will not move forward. The reality is a chunk of the funds, okay, did not get to the farmers. The challenge is when they needed it.
Yeah.
It's not that it did not get to them. A chunk of, let's say, a large percentage went to individuals who suddenly went to set up agri projects without knowledge, but they brought consultants and experts, and many of them have facilities that are not running. They took the money to still run projects, but those projects are moribund now. The farmers who got the funding, many of them got the funding in terms of input and co at the wrong timing. So, and government is to blame for that. And even the private sector that ran into like the anchor borrowers, they didn't know anything about it. They just, okay, I have a collateral, so they went to get, 1,000 farmers, 10,000 farmers. They did not really understand the nitty-gritty. So, government made the fund available. And even, I can tell you, a majority of the farmers sold the farm inputs. I stand to be corrected. I was in Gombe. I was in many of those states. When they were distributing some of these things, across they were selling. So, bottom line is that everybody has a fault. The ones that got it sold, they didn't tell me a story. 5 local governments in Gombe sold in my presence. I can name names. You know, so bottom line is that refund. See, what part of the challenges that President Tinubu's administration needs to do if we're going to be food secure, do away with the associations. Get involved with cooperatives. The associations are heavily politicized. Is it not an association that bought a presidential form for somebody when their farmers are complaining? Do you get? So many of them don't have farms. I stand to be corrected. This is national TV. Let them challenge me. Many of the president associations of most of the associations are doing it part-time, not full-time.
Yeah, but that means that puts food on their table.
Yeah. So they will never protect the sector. But when it is cooperatives that they are working with, cooperative for 20, 30 and co, the right people will apply and get the things. Associations, every initiative is mostly since 1999 is through associations, not cooperatives. That needs to change.
Okay. Anyway, you mentioned the Dundun story, which got interested because I want to believe that if we all have to tighten our belts, make sure that our society is working, eating what we produce, it should also start with government. But the problem which I foresee is, let's take for instance, in the government house, Aso Rock, they say they are no longer eating any Igbo food there. It's dundun, akara, ugi, and all of that. Do we have enough to cater for the needs that we have? Do we have enough? And if we don't have enough, what are some of the steps we need to begin to take so that we know we are producing, this is solution now, we are producing enough for ourselves first before we're even thinking importation and exportation?
Okay, now to produce enough now, it's not primarily about the individual rurals, we call them smallholder farmers.
Okay.
There are many people, private sector, who have invested in agric, especially in the last 3 years, that they've lost their resources, either to herdsmen, either to banditry.
Wow.
So those, the president said they will give credit. Those are the people that need most of the credit, because most of those projects are in the rural community. So there can be jobs created. They have facilities. They have infrastructures lying fallow across every state in this country.
Yes,
if you fund those people, you can track, you can monitor, they'll create jobs, and then set it up as like training institute also. Basically, they learn and they spread that. But they should fund the people who have infrastructure
already
that is moribund, instead of trying to start new projects and attach youth to learn. But there's no state in this country that do not have multiple projects. All the jackpot that we've spoken about, we can produce more quality of food. Jackpot means there's more food export opportunities to Nigerians abroad.
Yes.
That's jackpot for me.
Standard.
Do you get so?
So let me come in.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me take Hassan's call and I'll come to you. Hassan, thanks for calling. You're live.
Hassan.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning, sir.
Good morning to your guest, Mr. Mogaji.
Good morning.
Mr. Mogaji, we have to be very, very frank with ourselves. You see, everything we listed are already on the ground. If you are talking about irrigation, right from Shagaris beginning, we have all these dams. We have January, we have Kaduna Kanadua, we have Owena, we have Oshun, something
River Basin.
But you know what? Most of the river basins, we are only utilized in northern Nigeria. In the western Nigeria, they were not utilized. Go to Ishai area. Go to Owena. They are not utilizing them. They are online follow. Secondly, the problem with agriculture is lack of sincerity or purpose. Government put everything in place, but all the programs put in place were cornered by people. The people that are not farmers, the Lagos men, the Abuja men, Port Harcourt men, are the people that even took the chunks of alcohol. So there's no sincerity. And when you are talking of helping the farmer, there is no way government can take itself out from helping the farmer because they need chemicals. And these chemicals are beyond the needs of the common man. Government must subsidize coming. But the problem is this: government must put its foot down to find the monster corrupted in our midst. Good morning.
Good morning, indeed. Go ahead.
Okay, so I have several people that have reached out to me that they want to sell their farms. Yeah. I know two people that, one I met in the UK earlier this year that had a farming project that was collecting a lot of money from him. And so he felt he wasn't running it anymore. And then I know someone in Ekpe that has closed down his poultry business that he cannot sustain. So that idea is a very important one. You spoke about the a lot of projects being done in silos, policies also being done in isolation. And I want to, my suggestion was local government should take responsibility, but how do we get them to do that? How do we get local government to get FIRO's reports on every local government, knowing what the local government has to produce, and take responsibility for resuscitating, because local government will know the places that closed down. They know the businesses that opened, that brought employment and suddenly closed down, and can easily get in touch with them to bring them back, seeking the funds. So how should we engage local government to take responsibility for the growth within the locality?
Let me just add, because I feel that my question is similar to hers, but because you had mentioned cooperatives and associations, and it would be best to work with cooperatives other than association. But cooperatives, are they arranged in such a way that they can get access to these funds, from government, or associations better arranged in such a way that they are able to understand the needs and how to access funds for what the farmers need?
First and foremost, when Nigeria was working, it was the cooperatives, not the association. There was a system that connected to the cooperatives, not associations. The businesses, the big exporters, went down to work with the cooperatives, not associations.
Okay. Wow.
So we need to retrace our steps to what worked. That worked. And that can work again. The associations, many of them protect their interest. Call any farmer now and find out if they are members of the co-associations, because they are supposed to be lobbyists, but they are not lobbying. A majority of them. They're supposed to lobby government. I say this again. When government was concessioning silos, how many maize associations, how many of those associations went to bid for it? They would have gotten it on a platter of gold, but they also don't understand why they are there, because it's not their primary source of income. Now, the last speaker also spoke about the river basin. I've been a river basin since 1995, river basin farmer. Ofiki, Shekpeteri, Igbojaye, Agwa, all these things he was talking about, so I have operated there. You don't blame government for having facilities that private sector is not taking advantage of. I have a farmer that I took there. He started 5 acres, 30 acres, 100 acres. He's doing 800 acres on government land, and it's still cheap, Southwest. So Southwest has not taken advantage. So government has the infrastructure. It's private sector to take advantage, not government again. So
we have to wrap up, but I mean, this is a really important point you've made so far, and I hope our government is listening. But one thing that struck me from what you said is that we have everything we need.
We have everything.
Everything we need. We don't need any international funding. All we just need right now is implementation of the set policies that is available.
Exactly.
We just need, hopefully, a minister of
agriculture and water resources.
And security. They work together.
Yeah, but in terms of
multiple, but instead of core,
in terms of core,
agriculture,
water resources and agriculture must work together.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. It was a real pleasure having you. Always a pleasure having you here.
Yes.
Mr. Mogaji, for joining us. That's all we can take on this Monday. See you tomorrow. Bye for now.